audience, warmly welcome to this special edition of the Nordic Battery Thursday. We will dedicate this session to launching a special report that has been made. It's called the Nordic Battery Value Chain report. And it is the second edition of this report, a second expanded edition of this report that is today launched. And I have read this report, and I believe that this report possibly will be referred to as an encyclopedia for the Nordic value chain. It's very comprehensive and a very good report in my view. It's a very big honor for me to participate in today's session. I'm Tore Sekkenes. I work in normal conditions at the European Battery Alliance. But today I'm included in this session. I speak as if I wrote the report myself. That is very far away from the truth. The report has been made by 4 entities. These are Innovation Norway, Business Finland, Business Sweden, and the Swedish Energy Agency. And the whole report has been held together by Business Sweden. Based on my experience from the European battery industry, it seems like there are 3 clusters of battery industry being formed here in Europe. One of these is definitely the Nordic countries. This report is about that. To begin with, let's listen to some comments from the 3 trade promotion organizations and the Swedish Energy Agency.
This report maps out the Nordic battery value chain and highlights the necessities of the Nordic ecosystem based on interviews with industry players. It's a true collaboration between Business Finland, Innovation Norway, Business Sweden and the Swedish Energy Agency. The conclusion is that there is a real potential for the Nordic countries to decisively contribute to the European need for a sustainable, resilient and innovative battery industry. First of all, the Nordic are committed to building up sustainable value chains. Climate targets and electrification have caused an unprecedented battery demand. This demand is foremost driven by electric vehicles, and as much as 93% of global sales are taking place in China, Europe and the USA. The establishment of a complete regional battery value chain is imperative for Europe, both for the clean energy transition and for the industry to stay competitive. The Nordics offer preconditions for efficient operational expenses and sustainable value chains, green, stable and affordable energy enabling sustainable business, and competitiveness at global level and long industrial traditions with triple helix customs and productive workforce. There are significant gaps between demand and supply along the full battery value chain. Considering initiatives with clear investment, the gap in Europe is predominantly within raw materials, active materials and recycling. Considering actual capacity, the gap is however wider, especially concerning battery cell production. The Nordic battery ecosystem is committed to make an impact for sustainability.
The companies that we have interviewed all stress the importance of navigating in these very complicated times. They point at COVID and the aftermaths of that. They point naturally at the container crisis and transport crisis that they experienced just a few years ago. They also point to the Russian war and the problems that is causing, especially naturally on energy prices and electricity supply, but also on inflation in general and what is looking to become a European downturn in the economy, maybe even a recession. So it's a very complicated setting that they're acting in. And naturally, having said that the setting is complicated, it is even more important that the factors that will drive this sector or this energy or this cluster has to be in place. And what they point to then is, number one, the supply chains have to be in place. There has to be collaboration on ensuring that everything from raw materials to energy comes in to the production sites. especially naturally for these companies, raw materials are of importance. Raw materials and the control of the raw materials for the future will be very, very important, but also whether we can take the raw materials out of the ground and actually use that in order to transform our societies. Energy, naturally, another very, very important source. If we cannot make sure that we have a supply of energy that is needed, then it will be very difficult to transform the industry. And thirdly, competence. That's also part of the supply chain. If we cannot find the skill we need for a new industry, then we will not be able to make it. On top of that, infrastructure is super important. To have the test centers, to have the industry park, to have pace in how to develop the infrastructure that can hold the development of these companies. But also naturally partnership. Partnership in this world is the new leadership because it's moving so fast, it's so innovative, it is so challenging what we know today, that unless we have partnerships, we will never ever be able to kind of keep up the pace that is needed in this development. And lastly, this is a true global market, so we need, as much as possible, I should say, a level playing field for the companies working in the Nordics compared to companies working in other spaces.
Electrification causes changes and disruptions in traditional value chains. The Nordic countries have complementary strengths within the new value chains, and each of us are on the top 8 of the leading battery nations of the world. This means there is potential for us to achieve more together, and the changes in value chains underscores the need for strategic alliances. This report confirms the commitment of Nordic businesses towards sustainability and towards cooperating across the Nordics. Together, we have the potential to build a very strong Nordic hub delivering solutions to the world within batteries and other green technology that the world needs.
Whatever. No. Okay.
Dear colleagues and friends, the message in 2020 by the UN Secretary General was strong and clear. To reach the 1.5 degree target, the world needs to act decisively and decrease fossil fuel production by roughly 6% per year until 2030. I'm sad to say and to see that the world instead seems to move in the wrong direction. But it's still in our own hands if we act fast and act now. Keys that we have at our disposal are the rapid phase out of fossil fuels, which, by the way, was made even more clear by the Russian war on Ukraine. But also to enable more fossil-free and renewable electricity production and increase the flexibility of the electricity grid through energy storage solutions. And here, batteries will be crucial elements. The establishment of a regionally self-sustaining and complete battery value chain is imperative for the EU and Europe, both for the clean energy transition and for a competitive and resilient industry. Do we have the ingredients and the foundation to pursue such a value chain in Europe? The answer can be found in this new report, and it's a big yes. The Nordic countries will be central in building this complete battery chain. But we must act together and decisively, and we must act now, because the market is developing rapidly. The European roadmap is expected to be laid out in the coming 3 or 4 years, which has led to fierce competition for knowledge, establishment, and investments in Europe. I believe strongly that the Nordic countries have the potential for global attraction, thanks to access to competitiveness, to renewable and fossil-free energy, and stable integrated electricity system. And we have good potential for raw materials. Recent findings in the northern parts of Sweden confirms this. In 2021, the Swedish Energy Agency and Business Sweden took important steps towards increased Nordic collaboration with 2 reports, concluding the complementary strengths within the Nordic Battery Value Chain, a strong industrial potential, a common shared interest in trade and investment promotion, as well as for coordinated actions. The Nordic countries have a less visible and possibly unique strength: the way politics, academia, civil society, and industry collaborate. This is, I believe, for innovation and a vital component for future competitiveness. We, as a governmental agency, view storage technology as a prioritized area, and we are happy to see the commitment by the industry and trade promotion organizations, which is underlined by this report. Colleagues, we face a few challenges, that is true, but this report shows that these can be overcome by further strengthening our Nordic cross-border co-creation and collaboration when it comes to both batteries and the clean energy transition. Thank you for listening.
So, hello. And as Tora was saying in the beginning, this report was conducted by Business Sweden. And the report is about 110 pages long of insights. And today we will present to you the executive summary of this written report. And the report, as well as the executive summary, will be available for all of you online as of today. My name is Jessica Olsson, and I am Head of Energy and Transport Europe at Business Sweden, as well as part of our Nordic collaboration for Nordic Battery Collaboration Management team. And with me here today I have my colleague Ida Knudsen.
Thank you, Jessica. My name is Ida Knudsen. I'm a project manager at Business Sweden and part of Business Sweden's battery team for Europe.
So the Nordic ecosystem is operating on global markets with world-leading companies, prominent researchers, as well as innovative startups. And to do this report, to conduct this report, we have done over 40 interviews with leading companies and organizations and researchers in the Nordics, in Sweden, in Finland, in Norway, in Denmark, and as well also in Iceland. So with that, let's do it, Ida.
Yes. So the Nordics have a tangible potential for decisively contributing to the European need for a sustainable, resilient, and innovative battery industry. This report covers 4 main areas, which I will now introduce briefly, and then we will go into these in more detail later on. Firstly, the immense battery demand in the current global situation pushes for a sustainable, resilient, and innovative battery industry. Secondly, the Nordics have preconditions to contribute with key actors along the whole value chain. Thirdly, the Nordic industry highlights 7 pivotal necessities for growth. These are access to raw material, secured supply chain, competence, strategic partnerships, public frameworks to enable trade, scale, and level playing field, enabling infrastructure, and green energy. And we will go into these later on in the introduction of the executive summary. Fourthly, the last area is the existing opportunities for the Nordics within all 7 necessities, including rich deposits for critical material, solid foundation for competence, cell development, well-connected ecosystem, hotbed for new business models, drivers for charging infrastructure, and historically low electricity prices combined with a high share of renewable energy. So let's deep dive into the first area that we will look into. We see here that climate targets and electrification have caused an immense battery demand. We see that global battery demand is foremost driven by electric vehicles, with 93% of global sales in China, Europe, and the US in 2021. What we've also seen in the market is that there are significant gaps between this demand and the supply along the full battery value chain. And this is, for example, illustrated by EBA, the European Battery Association analysis, which you see in the report. And the supply gap, when you look at this parallel to the environmental, social, and governmental issues, this opens a window for sustainability and sustainable impact where the Nordics can contribute. So, looking into today's global supply chain, we see that there's several issues on environmental and human rights abuses, vast volume of water usage, geographical concerns as battery metal areas are of strategic significance, and this is where the Nordics really can make a difference. When we look into the second area, the battery industry today is dominated by few markets in times of a perfect storm. What we see here is that China has a clear dominance across the full global battery value chain, with 1/3 of the world's EV batteries coming from Chinese cattle. And currently, what we mean with the perfect storm, current market developments are influencing the market currently, including geopolitical effects on trade, energy supply, and electricity prices, as well as scarcity of components in a booming industry where the importance of resilient regional supply chain increases. And we see that a regional value chain is key for European competitiveness, where resilience and sustainability are highly valued. And we already see a lot of change in the field here and today. For instance, there are battery cell initiatives for more than 1.6 gigawatts per hour in Europe. The Nordic region has key actors in all parts of the value chain, with foreign and domestic investments in the industry. We can see this starting all the way from raw materials. This includes active mining, R&D, refinery, aluminium, initiatives for prospecting, and further deposits. In active materials, we see graphite and cathode material production ongoing, and initiatives for other production. In cells, we see production ongoing with Northvolt, Sweden, and multiple initiatives announced across the Nordic. In terms of packs, we see automotive and maritime pack production in the Nordics already happening. Within application, companies are in machinery, maritime, automotive, aviation across the Nordics, and then going in all the way into integration. We see examples of grid storage, charging, and within recycling and reuse, there are ongoing large-scale both investments and production in the Nordics currently. So, as Tore already mentioned in the introduction, Finland, Norway, and Sweden are among the top 8 countries globally, or the top 8 battery nations, in the Bloomberg NEF ranking of 2022. And the Nordics do offer preferable preconditions for business. Some examples of this is our long traditions within the industry, the flat hierarchies, strong work ethics, joint triple helix innovations, together with our green, stable, and affordable energy. This is the core of the Nordic competitiveness. And to conclude this section, the Nordics truly have a complementary strength within the value chain, as seen both within the areas of operation as well as within the ranking that Bloomberg conducted. Moving on to go into deep diving into each area and each necessity in the executive summary. Over to Jessica.
Thank you, Ida. And based on these over 40 interviews that we have conducted with the Nordic ecosystem, we concluded 7 areas of necessities or market needs that needs to happen in order for us to actually have a successful Nordic and European battery industry. And within each area, there are opportunities for the Nordics at home, but also for the Nordics to contribute to an increased competitiveness of Europe. All of these areas are important, They are equally important. We need to address them all in order to reach our goals. But if we start with the first one, access to raw materials. We have an immense demand, as have been mentioned several times, but the supply isn't coming in the same pace as supply. So we need to increase the supply, and we don't have sufficient ESG fulfillment of today. So here we have quite a gap between what we need and what we have today. And to close that gap, sustainability must be the goal for us. So in order to have this industry in the Nordics and in Europe, we need to secure a stable and available market volume and market price of these raw materials. And as Ida mentioned earlier, we do have rich deposits in the Nordics, and we do have a history of mining traditions, meaning the competence. But to enable to explore that, we need permits, we need a public debate to understand the holistic of the view of the battery industry, and we need to secure investments. Second of all, we need secured supply chain. And as also Ida mentioned in the beginning, concluding everything, is that Europe is today dependent on import of a lot of supply, and that supply is dominated by a few. And in order then to be resilient and to secure deliveries in the next part of the value chain, we must secure supply in each of the value chain parts, especially when it comes to raw material, active material and cells. So for Europe, we need the cell factories to actually get into production in Europe and get the cells to the clients, and not only to electric vehicles, but all application areas, including energy storage. In short term, that means that we need to continue importing. We are really dependent on the trade with our fellow countries out there on global markets. In the long term, we need to do both. We need to build up an industry at home as well. Thirdly, competence. This is something that is highly discussed. We have a really good foundation for competence in Europe and also in the Nordics. The value chain of the battery is based on traditional, really strong industries that we have here. So we have a lot of competence. But the electrification has disrupted what kind of competence we need and when we need it. And it's also a new industry. So we need this competence to take it to the next step. So in that sense, we need it all. We need to attract talent to come and join us in the Nordics. Come and go, but come. We need to upskill, we need to reskill, and we need to keep the competence that we have and attract the competence also based on our strong commitment to sustainability in the Nordics. Fourthly, the value chain of the battery industry have seen fundamental movements within the value chain. That means that the actors in the value chain are now taking different roles. Application producers are now joining forces with cell production companies, or cell production companies are joining forces with active material companies in order to secure their supply. Recycling is filling the gap in order to have a circular economy here. And when this happens, and everything goes so fast, and we have a lot of new actors coming into this market, we need to join forces, and we need these strategic partnerships in order to gain the intelligence also on management level to see how do you do it, how can we do it. We need the partnerships within the value chain. We even have former competitors joining forces, for example, to build up the charging infrastructure in Europe for trucks. And we need credibility and visibility, and this is also what we need partnerships for. Number 3, no, now I'm at, where am I, Ida? I'm at number 5. Thank you. Public framework. This is something to explain it a bit more. Some regions in the world has been investing for several years in the battery industry. Some have been investing for maybe half a decade, and some are investing heavily right now. And in the lead, we have Asia, we have Europe, and now coming the US. And all efforts to join in for a net zero economy are positive. But when you have public investments from the government or from institutions, it also has a big impact on the markets. And this is also something that is happening right now. We have the Inflation Reduction Act. We also have a strong need to get public framework for scale, for business of scale. One example is recycling, where we need regulations for transports to cross border more easily and thereby increase scale. And we have new types of business models, for example, battery as a service. But this service, how do you get that across borders? We need a higher understanding for that. So this is within the public framework. The second last, but all equally important, is enabling infrastructure. We have and we will keep on talking about speed. Everything happens very fast in this industry. That is also where we need the speed of establishments and to have the full market acting at the same time. So we are here highlighting the need for charging infrastructure in order to keep on not only supporting demand, but also supporting the feasibility and the operational of this industry. And the establishment supports for companies coming here, coming to the Nordics, coming to Europe, or establishing somewhere in the world to support this industry. So we need to facilitate for those investments in the Nordics and in Europe, but also for the ones who are here already. So we need to continue strengthening the municipality support that we get, the testing infrastructure, but also it comes also down to things as construction. We need to have speed also when it comes to construction in order to reach production as soon as possible, to reach deliveries to our clients. And last but not least, maybe even as a fundament for it all, is the need for green energy growth. We need green energy, we need stable energy, and we need cheap energy. And this is something that we have in the Nordics, that we are very proud of having in the Nordics, but we need and will need more. And a key thing here is the awareness of the public, that we have a holistic joint discussion about why we need this. Because at the end of the day, what we need to do here is to meet the immense demand, the not seen before demand that we have, and to meet that demand with a supply that is sustainable. And with that, Ida, I think we say over to you, Tore.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Please come over and join us here at the table. So now we have about 30 minutes of conversation regarding the report and the important topics in it. I would like to start by introducing the members in the panel. Jessica already introduced herself, Business Sweden, Head of Energy and Transport Europe. Then we have Nora from Innovation Norway, Head of Battery and Mobility. Welcome. From Finland, Ilkka, Head of Smart Mobility and Batteries. Welcome to you as well. And finally, Göran Stegrin from the Swedish Energy Agency, International Business Developer. Welcome to you too. So to start us up, the report to begin with is very complete and very well written. I have read the whole thing and it's really impressive. So what more is there to say? That's a rhetorical question. It talks about everything from the European competitiveness as a whole. It talks about the uniqueness of the Nordics that we just heard explained by just moments ago, and it talks about the future potential and what needs to be done in the future. But let's take this angle. a report that was released back in November last year. It's already been referenced. The Bloomberg report puts the three Nordic countries, 8 or above, on a list of the most advantageous countries to deal with the battery industry. This evaluation looks at a number of different factors, and for some reason these three countries that we have here in the studio, strange coincidence that 3 of the 8 best are here in one room. That is a good thing. The countries we are fighting with are actually United States, Canada, China, Germany is in there, and I forget the last one that is among these 8 countries. How can this be? It seems to me that the fact that we can join 3 of these 8 countries in one room indicates something about collaboration. And Nora, perhaps starting with you, I know you have things to say about collaboration. Would you like to expand on how the collaboration in our part of the battery world works?
Yes, thank you, Tore. And first of all, thank you to Jessica and Ida for the great introduction, and also for pulling the heaviest load in this report. And it's been a fantastic read and fun to see where we are today. And it's been a true collaborative effort, that has to say. We are truly, truly stronger together. And the Bloomberg list is very interesting, and seeing, you know, all the aspects of why we're so strong as a nation or a region. And if another fact or interesting fact to this is that if the Nordics were one country, we would be the 11th strongest economy in the world. So I think that says something about our collective power in order to achieve things. Historically, we've been good at collaboration, especially on cultural communities like the Nordic Council, etc., which gives us a unique edge and good experience in doing this. When I started working with the Nordic battery industry in 2019, Norway had a little brother complex. And we look jealously to our Swedish and Finnish neighbors in what they had achieved. Sweden with Northvolt, and Finland with their mining industry, etc. Of course, Norway has a lot of strongholds as well, but in the battery it wasn't truly formed yet. And now today we have actually 5 announced battery cell initiatives in Norway. And I now just have to allow myself to brag a little bit about that. We're not a little brother anymore. We are an equal triplet. And I think, you know, an example of good collaboration is that the 3 TPOs that we represent, we've done very well in collaborating in this sector, and I think that's a very good example of, you know, siblings have to compete, but they also have to root for each other's wins, and I think that's such a unique factor about the Nordic culture and etc. and why this works.
Thank you very much, Nora. You bring up a very important point, and I make connected to that. I frequently reflect on the fact that the market in the 10-15 years to come, and that's the extent you can objectively talk about it, is enormous. It's got biblical proportions. And exactly cooperation is the flavor of the day. I would like to underline that. I feel the need to say that very frequently. Cooperate wherever possible. We'll still compete where we have to compete, but cooperation is really the flavor of the day. This is a fundamental thing that you bring up. Another moving focus slightly, but related to what you were saying, another parameter still referring to the Bloomberg report is innovation. It just so happens that our 3 countries that we have here in the room, they actually rank first, second, and third when it comes to innovation, which is a nice thing. Finland leading, Sweden and Norway. We score highest in this Bloomberg report. Göran, you have a very long experience of business development.
Yeah.
Can you expand on innovation? Why are we here considered to be innovative? This is Bloomberg is not us speaking. That's somebody else saying this. Why is this? What have they seen?
I can actually add that there are other surveys showing similar things. So we are actually, by many, considered as top innovators, the Nordic countries. And just to talk about Bloomberg 2022, I'm really looking forward to Bloomberg 23, when we hopefully will have risen. I think we will actually do that on the other parameters as well. We cannot do basically any better on the innovation scale, but there are areas we can still improve, and I think we are. So looking forward to that. So back to the question, Tore. We can talk about numbers. R&D spending. We have a lot of support system for innovations in system in Sweden and Norway and Finland. So are others. But why is the fact that these three countries are so good? And I will come back to what has been stated previously by Jessica. And it's actually about collaboration again. That's I would say is a key factor why we can be that good at creating new ideas and innovations. The society is, I would say, based to a large extent on trust. You meet someone and you really trust that they wish you the best. And I think that applies to all three countries to a high extent. And that does not only apply to individuals, I think it also applies between organizations and agencies and government and people in the end. So I think that is a key question to focus on, to keep that trust. I would also like to mention that the Nordic countries has been globally connected for a very long time. We are very much influenced what's going on outside the Nordic countries. We are each one pretty small, so we have to look outside. And just an example, in Sweden there are 800,000 people employed by international companies. So we are connected. I'm sure the similar thing numbers are in Finland and Norway. And by the way, Norway is the biggest, and Finland is quite a little bit behind. But still, you are one of the big players in Sweden, and I guess it's vice versa. So we are connected and we are collaborating already, and I think that is fundamental for innovation.
Thank you very much. The battery field is not the only area where innovation is highlighted. We're talking about the battery industry now, but of course there are many other areas. So there must be something here. Let's go to the report itself now. There are some comparisons on the growth that we're seeing in this part of the industry. And I remember one slide that shows the investments today and compared to the investments made in the former version of the report. And the difference is quite remarkable. There are many investments and advances made elsewhere, but the fast growth is something that is remarkable. When I look at the number of companies and so on, I think we're actually breaking some kind of a record when it comes to building industry. Ilkka, can you comment on this fast growth? I know you have comments on that. Why are we able to do this here in our three small countries at the end of the world, so to say?
Yeah, thank you, Tore. I really love to talk about fast growth. That's when the things get sort of materializing and the results come out. In Nordics, we like to talk about speed or agility. So we are trying to move as fast as possible. Like in the report, it calls for urgency, it calls for speed. So we have been applying that very much. Of course, when we talk about battery industry, industrial approach, nothing happens overnight. But still, the mindset is to put as much speed as possible. And really, things are going the right way, because the growth is there, scale up is there. It's becoming visible on the Nordics in many ways, and also across the value chain, which is really good news. That becomes visible in terms of investments, investment announcements, but on the other hand, commercial success cases as a trade side. Results are doesn't happen by itself. It's hard work, it's determination, and I must also say that it's not without any challenges, which also become out in the report. I like to take only a few examples of the cross-border collaboration and the scale-up. FREYR is having an initiative in Vaasa. Welcome to Finland. FREYR has also plans in Mo i Rana. They have plans in US, so really fast-growing company. Stora Enso is developing lignin-based hard carbon to replace natural hard carbon component, working together with Northvolt from Sweden, Polestar, Swedish company, and Beyonder from Norway. Again, opportunity to scale up. End-use applications are getting decarbonized, for instance, mining, forestry, the mining sector, Epiroc, Sandvik. In the forestry, Finnish Ponsse companies is approaching very good. And finally, battery packs and battery solutions expanding from EVs to heavy duty and ESS area. As an examples, maybe Valmet Automotive as a tier 1 supplier for European OEMs, Celltech, which is part of the Swedish AdTech group, also working in the same area, and many more. This is just few examples. And then again, a strong Nordic collaboration is representing a huge opportunity going forward. I also like to say that we are not like a closed market, closed collaboration. We are always open for more collaboration internationally. Because we are open society, we are transparent, we are trustworthy societies. So really looking forward to collaboration. And finally, the last S is sustainability. We make no compromise on the sustainability. That's key going forward. Should be for every country in the world.
I like your two last comments very much. I'd like to comment on that already. Very fundamental. Let's not forget why we're going through this shift of paradigm. It's in many senses it's painful. We're going through. There are many industries that are suffering now, and so on. And we have to build them something new. It's difficult, but let's not forget and take shortcuts on why we're doing it. We're doing it for environmental reasons. That happens to give great opportunities for business and so on, but let's not forget the fundamentals. That's the first comment.
Yeah.
Second one, I like very much the comment on that we are now talking about these 3 countries, but let's not forget there's the rest of the world, and we need we need their help, and we need them as customers, and we need them as suppliers, and so on. So that's 2 very prudent comments from your side. Okay, now we've been praising ourselves, tapping ourselves on the shoulder for quite some time. Let's move into what we need to focus on. We have very good preconditions, we have a fabulous opportunity, but how do we maintain this now? How do we continue this success story? I turn to you, Jessica. You were deeply involved in making this report. Maybe you can tell us your view, first commenting on this fantastic opportunity, but then going more towards what are the areas that we need to focus on. Over to you.
No, thank you. No, and I think what is tangible here is the opportunity, the actual business opportunity, and that there is an actual business opportunity when you turn sustainability into competitiveness. And this is an industry that has where the industry itself has taken a lead. So when it comes to And of course, we do have climate targets that has been key in order to do this in a competitive, sustainable way. But the industry have really taken a lead, and this is why we have so much steel in the ground already in Europe. So the industry has put their money where their mouth is, so to say, and shown that there is a business case here. But there is a business case to be competed for. And so we do have a potential for the Nordics. I mean, we talk about the new base industry here, where we already have some quite great base industries, the process industry and maritime in Norway, mining machinery and so on in Finland, and also automotive and forestry mining also in Sweden. So that's quite big. Just for us in the Nordics, it is big when we talk about the new base industry. But we can't take it for granted, this opportunity. It's not just going to come to us. We can't. We need to work for it. As you said, Ilkka, we need to, there's a lot of sweat in it that we need to put in. But with our true commitment to sustainability, I believe we can, but still, we need to increase the volume of renewable energy, because that's quite the fundamental for this. We need to secure the raw materials. It's turning into a lot of things at the moment on global scale. We need to secure it. If it's new mining, if it's innovations for new types of raw materials, or if it's using secondary raw materials in a better way. There are different, but it's a lot of volume that we need. And then we need to level the global playing field. Because changed conditions in the world right now are also changing the willingness to invest. And we have the steel in the ground, but we still need to get it all the way to production. Other things when it comes to global, the playing field is also to enable scale. We had the example of regulations for recycling. You need to transport it across borders, so we need unison regulations there, just as an example. Then we have two things that are kind of across the full value chain, and the first one is competence, and the second example is like production machinery, which is something we might not think about all day. And a lot of the the companies that we interviewed for this also saying, I never knew so much about machinery than I know now when I entered this industry, and what decisive, how do you say, impact it can actually have.
Thank you very much. You touch on many of the on all of the important points that I think about. Highlighting some of them, raw materials. I think if I should bring up only one, I think this is the key one. And in fact, we have a lot of the stuff under our feet. So it's a mindset thing to do much more mining. I know this is a very controversial area, but I have this dream that when it comes to mining, we can do it if we want. If we on top of all the good stuff that we're doing, it's being recognized in the report that was just mentioned and so on. If we could be known for the ones that do truly sustainable mining, not just sustainable batteries, but sustainable mining, not causing environmental problems, that would be perhaps my biggest wish. If I could only have one wish, it would be that. It would be that. A second comment is on competence. I totally agree with this. There's a lot of people we need a lot of people in this industry, and there will be people, unfortunately, in other industries that will have to shift. If they want to work, they will have to shift. This process, we can do a lot more and a lot better to make this an agreeable shift of competency. You mentioned also changed conditions. When you say that, I hear the Inflation Reduction Act. There are many things, but I hear you talking about that or thinking about that. This is very high on our agenda now, and in one context, this is, of course, a problem. It makes it more difficult to attract or to keep industry here in Europe. when there is so much offered in subsidies on the other side of the Atlantic. Obviously, this is an important topic, and it's widely discussed in Brussels and so on and so forth. But I hope we can join hands and take that as a challenge, take that as something for us to get better. I'm not proposing that we do the same thing and just simply throw a lot of money on the table, but look at how can we make the European context even more attractable. Remember, the biggest market is in fact in Europe. If you go to the US, that is further away. So this is one thing we should not forget. And there are other things as well. I still believe that we have an advantage when it comes to competence, if we keep it up, and so on and so forth. Would you, passing back to you, Jessica, would you like to comment on IRA? I know you are deeply involved in discussions regarding that. Are there some comment you would like to make on that specifically?
Yeah, well, and I think talking also to the industry now, when you say, I mean, we can't also forgetting to keep the eye on the ball, is that why do we do that? I mean, it's a positive thing, all the actions that leads to net zero economy for the sustainability. And listening to the industry, I also believe we have enough, again, steel in the ground that it won't rock the industry in Europe. And we don't want to throw money. We need to on the floor, but we want to focus on the competitiveness of Europe. And there, when it comes to keywords as, we need to set the regulations for climate so that sustainability is a part of the business case and keeps being part of the business case, because here we can also then compete. And talking a lot about collaboration here, collaboration can be very tangible when it comes to numbers in your business case. It's not a fluffy word. When we talk about it very tangible, and that we need to have these cross-value chain collaborations. And at the end of the day, we want to work together also on a global scale, but it is harsh competition out there. And I mean, we need to, when it comes to trust in our business, what that also means is that the Nordics deliver on our promise. So when we say we will deliver something, that's also then what we do. So we want to deliver also on this promise to actually build the industry in Europe and in the Nordics.
Yeah.
Nora, can I pass the word to you, please?
And thank you for that. I support everything Jessica says. And by coincidence, on the way here to Stockholm today, I was listening to a podcast called In Good Company. It's by the Norwegian Oil Fund, led by Nicolai Tangen, and he had Bill Gates as a guest. And it was from last week. There was an energy conference in Oslo. And I was listening, half asleep on the flight, and IRA was mentioned in relation to the battery industry. And as perhaps two of the most conscious and sustainable investment organizations in the world, they were discussing it, because electrifying transport should be a common good for everyone, and IRA is sort of hindering this sort of free trade of both electric vehicles and or it could, it's a threat and could be an opportunity. And sort of that's what not said in the podcast, but what I'm saying is that, it's irresponsible to have those changed conditions, because it's, the companies are willing to make the investments in etc. But these changed conditions makes it then difficult for investments. And and I think that's definitely something we'll continue discussing in this Nordic collaboration.
Thank you very much. On this IRA, referring to what has been said by even the president of the European Commission, there are essentially four areas which I believe are important for us to level the playing field.
Yeah.
And one is on the approval processes. I think we can do a lot more to facilitate for European companies and other companies to get the approval to I'm thinking mostly of opening mines, but also for new industrial sites and so on. Competence, ensuring that there are good people. I mean, doesn't matter how much money you get, if you don't have the good people, it's still difficult to get people. On subsidies, the Americans bet heavily on subsidies. We do, in fact, have subsidies in Europe as well. We have something called IPCEIs. There is criticism against that it is too complex and so on. That is being facilitated. There are other innovation funds, for example, sovereignty funds and so on. If we could use that and direct that towards where we need it most, in fact, we do have some degree of subsidies, not as much as the Americans are throwing at the industry, but let's not forget that there are measures that we can, steps that we can take, and also to promote the free trade that you mentioned. These are the 4 pillars, in fact, that Ursula von Leyen referred to, and that I happen to know that a lot of work is going into that. Excuse me. Let's see. We're almost at the end of the seminar. Ilka, would you like to add something to what we just discussed?
I was just thinking about this IRA case, and I guess we could all say that Nordics, even together, we are a sort of a smaller area in the world, and we are really, let's say, looking for a level playing field. Let it be US, let it be Europe, and we are aligned with European development very much. But I like to mention that we in the Nordics, we play with the sort of different values. So our sort of sustainability or the openness, trustworthiness, it's not on sale. I mean, we invite, let's say, industry to join with us, but we don't sort of put we don't put the money on the table to join us. Yeah. It's different values, different criteria there.
Yeah. Göran?
Maybe the last comment. Thank you, Tore. I'm going back to my favorite subject, collaboration. Sorry for that. We talk a lot about economy, macroeconomy factors that influence a lot of things, among other raw material. That creates a push to come up with cost-efficient production. You have to reduce cost now. That's a lot of focus for the industry. So that could in turn push for new technologies, maybe not disruptive, but maybe different chemistries. So that in turn leads to you have requirements for innovators, innovations, and I would like to see a more collaboration also within earlier stages of the battery scene. We are talking, of course, it's extremely important to have the factories, the production that will lead to more exciting things like exciting things like R&D, but I would say I would like to see a push for also collaboration on lower technology readiness levels, where I think our 3 countries and also other in our neighborhood could actually give us a huge benefit.
We will have to do that because the world will not end now. We will make lithium-ion batteries for a very long time, but definitely there is room for much more. And then I come back to the problem with raw materials. New chemistries enabling us to not use these precious materials. That would be a total game changer, I must say. One final word from Jessica, perhaps?
Yes, when it comes to collaboration within academia, I mean, we're here, Finland, Norway, Sweden, but we also have prominent researchers in Denmark, for example, and also innovations in Iceland. And we work together jointly at Nordebat. It's a research trade fair or a research conference within the Nordics that it's moving around. And we were there last year together with Battery 2030 Plus, where it's also led by the Nordics. And in the academia are also, I mean, we are collaborating with them, but also this need for interactions within the Nordics and also within the Europe, and also, as you say, invite on a global scale, because we need to take this to the next step in the next generation as well. So just wanted to mention that.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we're coming to the wrap up. With this Battery Thursdays, the special edition of the Battery Thursdays, Nordic Battery Thursdays, I declare the report officially launched. Boom. Congratulations on that. It describes a success story, in my possibly partial view, it describes a success story in the making. It also points out the important areas where we need to do more, what that we need to focus on. We need to build on the strong preconditions that we have. We are fortunate to have very many of them. Some of them exist in many places, but we have, by some divine intervention or whatever it is, we have been blessed with very many of these preconditions. I will not list them here, they're all in the report. My 3 key wishes is on raw materials, skilled people, and enabling Europe to produce machinery that will enable us to feed this industry. I think with that, I would like to hand over the word to Nora, who will say a few comments on next steps.
Yeah, so
thank you very much, by the way.
thank you, Tore, and everyone. This was fun, but the work is not over. We're still continuing to bring the Nordic Battery Value Chain to life. I'm not going to list all of the market events that we're doing around the world that we're planning for 2023. Should Google the Nordic Battery Collaboration and you will find information. Mid-March you can see some of us in Japan. So stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.